All right. Well, welcome everybody. It is so wonderful to see you for our first session of the Beginning Care Farming series. My name is Kate Mudge, and I'm the co-director of the Care Farming Network. And again, excited to welcome you all to Introduction to Care Farming Foundations and Program Design. This is the third year that CFN has hosted the Beginner Care Farming series, and we are so glad you're here because tonight's session is especially designed for those who are dreaming, aspiring, or just beginning in their care farming journey. And we hope that you will find this information both meaningful and inspiring. So our webinar tonight will last about an hour. And what we're going to do is stay on an additional 15-20 minutes afterwards. If anybody has specific questions or topics that they want to raise from the webinar, more than welcome to stay on. We'll stop the recording after that hour, though. We'd also love to know where you are joining us from. So if you like, please introduce yourself in the chat by sharing your state. And also a quick note, this session, as I mentioned, it's being recorded. We're going to go ahead and email out a link via email within the next week, and that will include a link to the recording so you can watch it again. And for those that aren't able to make it tonight, they'll be able to see it. I also want to note that we are able to host this Beginning Care Farmer series in part through a grant from USDA's Northeast SARE support, and we thank them for that support. So with that, we're going to jump in and we're going to start with a quick poll. Again, we're just curious about where you might be in your care farming journey. So if you are able to see that poll there, there's 4 different answers. The first is, I'm just dreaming. Maybe you're getting started, taking some first steps. Could be that you're already established. Might be that you are just here to learn about care farming and not exactly sure. So we'll leave this up for just a couple more seconds. Are you all able to see the poll results as people are? Yeah. Oh, others can't see. Well, it looks like for those if you can't see the results, we're about folks that are dreaming and just getting started are about neck and neck. So thanks so much for sharing with us where you're at. So tonight, we are going to go through a number of kind of different topics. We're going to talk about what is care farming and some of its history, along with the care farming movement in the US. Then we're going to get deep into the program models and some case studies. We're also going to be talking about designing a program and things to keep in mind, and also building sustainability for your care farm. And as I mentioned, we will follow that up with a Q&A at the end. If you do have any questions as we're working through this, either jot them down or feel free to put them in chat, but we will hold those questions until the end. So as I mentioned before, I'm Kate. I serve as co-director of CFN. And our goal as a member-based network is to connect both established and aspiring care farms. We're here to foster support for care farmers, and we want to raise awareness about what we feel is a transformative power of care farming. And we do this by providing resources, expertise, and building a community for people to start, scale, and hopefully replicate care farms across the country. We're joined today also by Suzanne Kapral, who is a trusted voice in farm-based interventions, and she's here to share her experience and guidance with farms across the country who are also interested in learning how to start, fund, and sustain therapeutic farm programs. So we'll be kind of co-presenting today, popcorning it back and forth, and I'm going to hand things over to Suzanne to get us started.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kate, and welcome everyone. It's just fabulous to be here. I'm so happy to have this opportunity to meet you all and hopefully interact and maybe share some things that I've experienced over the last 15 years of working in the care farm realm. As Kate said, my name is Suzanne Kapral, and I am coming to you from a farm in northeastern Pennsylvania that's called the Lands at Hillside Farms. It's a historic nonprofit educational dairy farm, and we work closely with individuals who are considered vulnerable, as well as children with trauma who have experienced trauma. And then also we work in the educational aspect as well. So it's quite an interesting plate of responsibilities that we have here. As I mentioned, I was with the farm for 15 years, and we've been doing care farming since that time. When I'm not working at the farm, I'm also a auditor for A Greener World. And what I have the good fortune to do is to travel the country and Canada and really inspect farms and talk a little bit about, regenerative agriculture, sustainability, and animal welfare. So credentials are up there on the screen. I don't need to go over them, and we could just continue right now. So that is just a little bit of an overview of the farm, and that's actually a beautiful visual. We're very lucky because this farm was actually slated to be raised and turned into condominiums and those great big McMansions that we see popping up everywhere. And through some really good luck and through some hard-earned fundraising, we were able to save the farm, which dates back to 1881, and actually turn it into a nonprofit teaching farm, which it will remain forever and ever. So I just want to briefly touch on what care farming is, a little bit about the history and the principles. And I'm not going to read every slide verbatim because, again, you can see it on your screen, and then, of course, you're going to want to watch the recording of this webinar. But it goes back to as early as the 13th century in Belgium, and in this little town of Giel, where families started working with vulnerable adults in a farming environment. So when we think of care farming, perhaps for us, we think maybe this is something that's just come up in the last few decades, but really the roots run so deep that you could see the 18th and 19th century. It became very popular in England. And then it really began to kick in the mid 20th century when we got into horticultural therapy and farm-based therapy, which is actually now called green care or green farming or farm-based therapy, excuse me. The Netherlands was really the birthplace of contemporary care farms, and it truly is a leader today. As I said, from the 1960s, though, to the present, it really started to spread through Europe. And there are over 400 care farms right now through the United Kingdom, which is quite impressive when you think about how it started just a few centuries earlier, and then what it's like today. So as we can see in the United States, we start to pick up speed a little bit from the 1800s to the early 1900s. We had institutional farm colonies, and they were attached to asylums and poorhouses. And obviously, we don't use that terminology today, but you can see that there was a focus on mental health for these individuals. So in the mid 1990s, the decline of these institutional farms, they were deinstitutionalized and they were reduced to actual work areas, working farms. And that took us to the late 1900s. So that's when the seeds of the therapeutic farming really began to kick off. That's when we're looking at horticultural therapy as well as our animal assisted interventions. So if we're looking at where we are today from about 2000 to the present, you can see that the European models are still flourishing throughout the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and Scandinavia. That actually inspired us here in the United States. So we have a tremendous growing awareness in the care farming realm. And it's also interesting because it's connected to agriculture, but also to food justice, which I find fascinating and powerful, social prescribing, and mental health resilience. And we're not just serving adults any longer. We have children in care farm programs as young as 5 years old. So we can also serve our veterans, our youth, our teenagers, our young adults, our older adults, as well as people who might be considered within our vulnerable population, such as individuals with disabilities.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'm going to take over here and talk a little bit about some of the core elements of care farming. As Care Farming Network describes and defines care farming, it is the use of therapeutic farming to promote health, well-being, and belonging. And I want to point out a couple of things that we find very important for us to have worked on the shared languaging of care farming, which is still obviously a terminology that not a lot of people know about. So as we're working to change that, we just want to educate people that there is this intentional use within care farming. And the intentional use is in its practice, that you're engaging with land or plants and animals, and that you're focusing on inclusion and community building. Oftentimes, care farms are providing some sort of meaningful work or potentially skill development. And this blending of agriculture with therapeutic, educational, and vocational opportunities is creating this environment specifically for targeted populations. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. I like to say that there's sort of this no duh philosophy within Care Farming Network, that we all kind of know that there's these benefits when you are interacting with nature. And here are some of them. We have these listed on our website. And for any of you who are interested in using some of our handouts or visuals like this, if you have your own care farm or people ask you what the heck is care farming, you can actually download these from our website. And this just talks about the numerous benefits that we believe folks receive when involved in a care farm. Couple things, if anyone was with us on a webinar back in, I think April it was, again, we're working on some shared language. And here's a nice chart kind of describing in a little bit more detail about what care farming is and isn't. As I said, it's not just a traditional farm. There's a structure on a care farm, and it is intentional. And oftentimes, the folks that are receiving care on the farm are, under some sort of plan or guidance that is structured and tailored for their growth and healing. It's not just a hobby farm or agritourism. There is a defined mission, again, with this focus on inclusion and social impact and participant growth. It's not an exclusive model. You're going to see that care farming has many different approaches. There is no single way of integrating, farming with the social and health benefits. And it's not one way. There is this mutual engagement. So when we talk about participants on the care farm, that's not just a client. That can be staff, that can be volunteer. It is a two-way interactive mutual engagement where everybody is getting some meaning from the care farm itself. And again, it's not just a nature-based approach for all. If you go to a farm and do goat yoga, that is wonderful. In our definition, that's not necessarily a care farm, because there is not a specific support for a targeted population. So what do we mean when we're talking about targeted population? There's, excuse me, care farming programs are designed to support often vulnerable and underserved populations. So we see seniors, immigrants, people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, others on this slide. And again, it's important to note that care farming, it's not only about serving a specific population. There are restorative benefits for anybody who is working and involved in a care farm. So in short, care farming creates these spaces for people across many life experiences to connect and to heal and to thrive through farming or gardening or whatever community activity is on your farm. We're going to pause here and just do one more quick poll. And this just is a quick question for y'all. As you're thinking about a care farm, we're curious about who you might tailor and be interested in working with. And this just helps us too, as a network, to know a little bit more about who's interested in doing what. And there are quite a few different, make sure if you can scroll down, you'll see that there's quite a few different options there. We'll keep it open for just another second. So we see folks interested in veterans, youth, people in recovery, those in the justice system, mental health, disabilities, autism, and some elderly. Thank you, everyone. So farming practices themselves within care farming are as diverse as farms themselves. So you can see that some farms focus on vegetables, fruits, flowers, while others are raising farm animals or doing beekeeping. Still others are specializing in nurseries. We see aquaponic and hydroponic care farms, or there's folks out there doing value-added products such as jams, baked goods, sometimes herbal skin remedies. And this diversity just means that care farms can be shaped to match the land and resources and communities that they serve. I want to take one quick note here and say for anybody who's interested in seeing membership and this breadth and diversity of care farms across the country, on our website, you can find a care farm and you can filter by population, geographic region, type of farming. It's really neat. So check it out if you're not aware that that map exists. So last couple minutes here, just Suzanne talked about this, the care farming movement in the US and the specifically care farming network. The seed for our network was planted at Red Wiggler Care Farm. And for over 30, almost 30 years, Red Wiggler has employed people with developmental disabilities and prompting both established and aspiring care farmers to seek their guidance and support. Lots of people, working at Red Wiggler, were getting the question from others, where's the support system for people who are doing this work? And so in 2018, things started moving. In 2021, there was an actual launch of the Care Farming Network. And again, we're here to provide resources and raise awareness about care farming in the United States. You can see here, this is right from our website, kind of where we're at and what's happened in the last few years. And these are the building blocks around awareness, community, and building that capacity and how we provide those services. As a network, we are continuing to raise awareness in as many ways as possible because, as I said before, we do believe that care farming is transformational. So we're working on research. We make videos to help explain visually what care farming is. We've been featured on National Public Radio, asking why aren't there more care farms in the US? And we are here to say there are. We have over 350 care farms currently on our map. And our goal is a care farm in every county. So at Care Farming Network, we generally see care farms fitting into a few different models. We have employment and job training development. We have therapeutic care farms, licensed therapy, and residential and life sharing communities. I want to say it has not been an easy task to decide what four models we talk about because as I said, there's lots of models, but in general, we have found these models to be pretty representative of what folks are doing out there. So I'm going to take a second and just kind of break down each model. Starting with the employment and job training, which it does exactly that. Farms are providing employment or job training to growers and employees. And then the second model is therapeutic. That can be working with animals, like Suzanne was saying, and doing some nature-based therapy. And these are just a smattering of examples of different care farms across the country. You're going to get this slide emailed to you, and you can actually click on the slides and explore the farms. It was really hard to choose which ones to highlight. So these are, again, just some examples. Capabilities, they're located, it's a care farm market and gift shop. They're located on Cape Cod, and they are providing meaningful work opportunities to individuals with disabilities there in Massachusetts. I mentioned before, we have hydroponic and aquaponic care farms, and we have Greens Do Good here as an example of a care farm operating in a hydroponic uh, uh, facility right there out of New Jersey. And they again focus on job training through greenhouse work using their hydroponic growing system. This is an example of a farm offering animal-assisted intervention. Equicenter is located in New York. So they use a wide range of programming to foster both personal growth and individual achievement. They offer things like individualized lessons. They have a horticulture and equine active learning program. They also have a 3-acre organic farm and culinary classes. And they're providing services to those with disabilities, veterans, and at-risk youth. I love talking about therapeutic farms that work with bees. This is Mission Believe, and they provide beekeeping education for veterans and first responders. So they're supporting both the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of veterans and first responders through this kind of, I don't want to say new, it was kind of new to me, the therapeutic and enriching practice of beekeeping. And I think we might have something to drop in the chat here too, or we'll share out afterwards. We did a webinar not too long ago about the therapeutic value of beekeeping, and it was really fascinating for anyone who is interested in bees and their culture and some of their restorative healing power. So getting into the third and fourth model, we move into licensed therapy and life-sharing communities. Licensed therapy is a bit different than therapeutic because the licensed therapy farms are integrating credentialed professionals, such as therapists or mental health practitioners, into a farm setting. So they're combining a clinical expertise with the benefits of farming. And a residential or life-sharing community is exactly that. It is bringing people together to live and work on a farm. And so within that, you have this supportive environment where daily life and care are woven into the rhythm of farm work. Some examples, Simple Sparrow, they're a nonprofit, trauma-informed care farm. They're located in Texas, just outside of Austin, and they collaborate with community partners and have credentialed mental health therapists on site, again, providing trauma-informed educational and therapeutic care farm programs and services to people of all ages, backgrounds. They have a neat program called Learn, Grow, Heal, and Jamie Tanner, who is the director there, wonderful person, great podcast. You can find that on our website too, doing some really neat work. An example of a life-sharing community. You might be familiar with Camp Hill communities. These are farms across the nation. There are more than 100 communities in 22 countries where people with and without disabilities live, work, and care for each other. And they are based on a social, spiritual, cultural, and agricultural renewal. Bittersweet Farms in Ohio, they're offering a community living program and day program for those with autism. They focus on horticulture, gardens, and animal care. And each of these models is unique. And we're sharing them with you to give you, again, a sense of the range and variety of how care farms operate. Again, if you'd like to explore more, visit that online map that I mentioned and do that search, and just see as you search, you can then be directed to Care Farm's websites or social media platforms. So with that, I'm going to hand things back to Suzanne. She's going to expand a little bit on some examples that are personal to her. And with that, I will spotlight you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much. Yes, I want to take just a few minutes and go over two examples of some farms that I've worked with personally over the years. Dream Green Farm is a project with Hillside Farms, which is the farm, that's my base farm here in northeastern Pennsylvania. And what this is it serves vulnerable youth, typically ages 16 to 21. And these individuals, they need a little bit of help, some with life skills, others have behavioral challenges, and that sort. So, what we did back in 2009 is we wrote a grant, and we applied for a grant with the USDA. And we were fortunate enough to get a grant that would have this program seed to market. We have greenhouses on the farm. So this seed to market program allowed these kids, these students, to grow seeds and then from that tend them throughout the months in the greenhouse. Plant in a 2-acre garden. We started with a smaller scope, 2-acre garden, and really have the entire experience of farming from seed to market. We have job coaches on staff that would work with these individuals to teach them all about the planting, the harvesting, the greenhouse work. But there was so much more that would happen with this. We learned very quickly that these students were learning their social skills, but also valuable employment skills. So this program, Dream Green Farm, is all about teaching the individuals valuable skills so they could get work when they left our program at age 21. Now, in addition to taking care of the plants and doing all the weeding and doing the harvesting and the washing and packing things up, they they would take their produce to the farmers market. From there, they learn valuable skills such as sales and marketing, communication, customer service, interaction with the public, money exchange, etc. So when you think of a care farm, there's so much more that you can do than what is happening in the earth. It's just, as Kate mentioned so many times throughout this presentation, it really is a melding of many, many skills that these individuals can take with them now and in their future. And in the next slide, we just again we had it was a 2009 USDA grant, and we would take about 30 students maximum. And we have to keep it, you'd have to cap it because obviously when you're working with individuals, depending on the challenges or the vulnerabilities of these individuals, you're going to want to make sure that you have a good ratio, a lower ratio of either therapists who are on site, or in this case, we had the job coaches. So as I mentioned about the farmers market, what's really cool is the majority, not all, but the majority of our students that go through this program, and it doesn't cost the families anything to go through this program. This is totally funded. They're getting jobs at Home Depot and Lowe's and local colleges. And it's just really exciting to see. And they're proud that they can actually contribute to the communities that help them learn these valuable skills. And Kate mentioned the importance of research. Research is key because you have to know, is this program working? And funding, it's going to help you get additional funding. So we've had Misericordia University, which is in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, as well as King's College in Luzerne County, to actually do qualitative and quantitative studies. And we have the data that this model works, this care farming model works. And that's just my first example. So if we can go on to the second example, I have the pleasure of working with Roots at Evergreen Grove in Gardner, Massachusetts. Now, this is a little different. This is more hands-on working in the farm environment with the animals. These are individuals, young teenagers who are either in active addiction or they are at risk of addiction. So you're looking at young people ages 12 to 24. And they have either substance use or substance use at risk and or mental health challenges. So what this is all about treatment and or early intervention. So what's really cool about this, again, is these individuals are in nature. They're outside, they're working with the animals, they're caring for the livestock, they're doing the barn work. So they're busy, they have structures, they have responsibilities, and they have daily goals. And not everything is hands-on with the animals. They're also doing farm-based arts and crafts. They have time to take walks in nature and take hikes. Downtime is just as important in nature as working one-on-one with either the plants, the dirt, the environment, or the animals. Now, Roots also has counselors on staff. So they have therapeutic counselors that are on staff working with these individuals. They spend about 3 to 4 hours a day. They're not in residential, and it's about a 12-week program. Right now, this is funded by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and this is a Green Care initiative. And it's going to be funded for the next several years. And so we're very happy about that because, again, these individuals have tough lives and they have tough cases. They don't need the financial strain on top of everything else. So we're very, very grateful that we're able to get the funding through the Department of Public Health. Referrals, where do we get the individuals from? They come from the schools, caregivers, the providers, and even in some cases, the individuals themselves say, I need help and I'd like to get into this program. And as you can see right now, there's some outcomes and successes that I would just like to briefly highlight. In the middle here, this I think is my favorite. The media reports and the anecdotal reports suggest that the participants benefit because there's responsibility, there's trust, and there's accountability. Remember, we all have a goal. We need goals in our life, even mini goals every day. And structure helps, deadlines help. And to actually see the fruit of their labor is such an incredible boost to their self-esteem and their sense of purpose. It's really cool because we hear the individuals say that it's therapy, but it's really not therapy. It doesn't feel like therapy. We're not in a room under fluorescent lights with plastic plants, etc. And this is the magic of care farming. So whether it's working with the animals or horticulture or hydroponics, there's so many examples out there where nature and the earth can heal and help and empower. So I'd like to talk briefly about designing a care farming program. Now, this is going to be the 40,000-foot view, okay? We're not going to get into all the roots and the nuts and bolts, but this is just to give you some things to think about when you are deciding if you're going to go ahead with your program, or maybe you're going to write things down and you just want to get some fresh ideas. So first of all, a few core questions, obvious but important. So why do you want to even begin a care farm? Like think about right now, what was your inspiration? And so if you have your inspiration, the next thing you really need to think about is what's going to be your service model? So what are you going to do? Are you going to be providing farm-based therapy sessions, employment, life skills, or in the case of our farm, it's all of the above, and you can do that. But I just recommend that you start to think about which segments of the population you want to serve. And then have you determined the need? You know, in sales and marketing, we do these things called feasibility studies before we get into a big capital campaign to raise money. It's the same thing when you are starting a care farm or any other small business. How are you determining that there is a need? So you could do a survey. It could be a simple survey. It could be SurveyMonkey. You could reach out to local service providers, but just get an idea for yourself and your own sanity that there's definitely a need out there, and then take the next step of fulfilling that need. So a few other core questions that you might want to think about if you haven't already. How are you going to match your evidence-based approaches to your demographics? The cool thing about care farming and the magical thing and the powerful thing about care farming is it doesn't have to be one size fits all. And so you can have this wonderful environment. And maybe for this group of individuals, you're going to tailor a program that maybe wouldn't work for the next group of individuals. And you can certainly do that, but you have to think about the evidence-based information out there, what works and what's going to work for the individuals you choose to serve. Are you going to be using an existing farm? Do you own land? Or are you going to be partnering with a small land? And you don't have to have a huge acre like Dream Green, I just mentioned a few slides ago. That started with 2 acres. 2 acres in the wing of a greenhouse. And it's grown to this organization now that sustains itself and is able to serve more individuals each year. So you also need to think about zoning and any local ordinances, because we all know that every town kind of has its rules and its regulations of what we can and cannot do. And that is a simple call or going online to your county's or your local area's website. And that information should be there for you. Also, are you going to incorporate farm animals? You don't have to. It's a nice to do, but you could do produce. Or in some cases, we have many farms in this network that do both produce and animals. So a few other things that are important. What kind of the structured sessions are you going to have? So are you going to have only farm-based activities and tasks? Are you actually going to have therapy sessions on the farm? Or in some cases, you can have therapy sessions happening, in this instance, while you're mucking a stall, or while you're weeding a garden, or while you're gathering and washing produce. Think about the type of staff that you're going to need. Job coaches, therapists, always have a farmhand. Farm staff is critical no matter what your environment. Are you going to get your individuals through referrals? What kind of outreach are you going to do? So how are you going to develop your initial service base? And then realistically, this is an important one. How many individuals can you serve? We get into this and we want to just help so many people, but you can't do it all at once. So it's best to start with a smaller group of individuals and get the core competencies down first. Build that strong foundation, and I promise you, once word gets out, they will come. You will have no problem getting more individuals for your program. Who's going to train your staff? That's a biggie. How are you going to implement safeguards? Ethics is huge. Confidentiality is huge. Quality control. How are you going to make sure things are running as they should be running all the time? And if you are going to include any type of farm animal, including guinea pigs, you will need to think about what steps you will have in place and what training, so you can ensure to the best of your ability that you will provide high quality farm animal welfare. And then finally, one of my favorite things is, how are you going to measure outcomes and success? We can do our surveys, and we can do all kind of qualitative and quantitative analysis and data collection and all that stuff with statistics. And you're going to need that if you're going to be reporting to your funders, or maybe if you are going to be for profit. That's for another seminar though, excuse me. But what is important to you is, how are you going to measure the outcomes and successes? And you'll see it in the faces of the individuals you're working with. And you're going to get the feedback from the individuals that you're working with. And that is going to be an incredible amount of fuel to keep you going in the future. So those are just some of the basics. Here's some practical stuff that you need to know. So you have to think about why your farm setting matters. You're going to have predictable chores and visible outcomes. You can't just keep mixing it up every single day. So there is going to be need a sense of structure within your care farm. What kind of benefits are you going to have? Is it going to be working in the garden or with animals in a community of practice? So the biosociological benefits, think about that as well. Social inclusion is important, because when you're in a care farm, no matter what you're doing, you want those individuals to contribute to real production. So it's kind of like, when you're at school, you'd be studying, you have theory, you're reading everything about it in the book, but then you've got practical. You have your hands on, and that's where the magic happens. They contribute to the real production of the end product. And that's where it clicks for your individuals. So the thing that I do want to point out is if you do choose to do care farming and you really want it to be hands-on experiential, which it really should be, it's more realistic to focus on working with a smaller farm as opposed to a larger agricultural setting. Obvious reasons. It's more personable. It's more manageable in terms of human safety, as well as more manageable in terms of animal welfare. You have opportunities for interactions with your farm staff, and they love to share, and they're so smart when it comes to what it takes to run a farm. You can learn so much, as well as the individuals can learn so much from farm staff. And then the environment in a smaller setting is typically more natural. So then sometimes I get this question, yeah, but what are the farm animals supposed to do in all this? Okay. Well, the farm animals are not required to do anything other than be an animal. The children or the adults participating in a care farming are, in essence, think of yourself as a co farmer when you're in session. Participants have the responsibility, at least in part, for providing basic animal care while at this farm. What we do at Hillside Farms is we have all of our farm work, our care farming sessions hands on in the morning. And then after the farm chores are all over is when we get together and we actually bring in our mental health professionals and our trauma counselors. And then we have found out, often through trial and error, like many of us have, that when we do this format, the children and the adults are more open. They're more relaxed. They've been in the air, they've been in the sunshine, even the cold air. They're working together as a team, they're trusting, and those barriers to communication begin to go down, and they're more open to listening and sharing. And this is just another example of one of our sessions. One thing that I do like to point out, regardless of the type of care farm that you're going to have, they may have you might have animals, but you can also teach. When you're teaching about horticulture, you could teach biology. You could teach about the value of dirt and the science that goes into that and why dirt matters. And basically everything on this earth, including everything we eat, everything we consume, comes from dirt. So you get these really good opportunities to do cross training and cross education. So here's a few practical recommendations that I always stress. You always need to have farm staff or trained staff nearby. All of your activities are supervised. Even if they're supervised from a distance, you want to have someone watching those individuals. There has to be clear communication on behaviors. And this is obvious, but no yelling, running, hitting, chasing, etc. We still see it. Proper techniques. If you're using farm tools, if you're using implements, maybe some of your individuals will be driving a gator or working on machinery. How do they do it in the proper way so everyone is safe? And then obviously, if some of you are going to be working with animals, and this applies to working with other individuals as well, you want to look for signs of stress. And if you see signs of anxiety or stress, you want to recognize that, you want to take a step back, and you want to respect the signals that you're getting, not only from an animal, but from the individuals as well. And then if you are in a care farm, do you think it's possible for like just observing? Like, is that going to do anything? And absolutely, yes. You don't necessarily have to have individuals participating all the time. Sometimes you might have somebody who just wants to sit back and watch and look at what the other individuals are doing on the care farm. You can teach resilience and adaptability, the hierarchy, the social interaction, instinct and intuition for people and for animals, responsibility, and obviously caring. One thing we do sometimes, if we have adults and we even have children do this, they just time out. They don't want to do anything. They are close to a meltdown. We have them take a book. We've got adult books in our library and our children's books, and they can just go and they can go sit by the stream. They could go sit in a garden, or they could go, in this case, sit in our calf nursery and just read a book or chill. And I wanted to share this. And again, I understand that not everybody is going to be working with animals, but this was something magic that happened 2 years ago on our farm. And it was adult therapy sessions. And we just popped everybody in the people mover, took the tracker, we went up to the tractor, we went up to the pastures, and we were just going to sit and talk and be. And it was like magic. The cows all came around. It was like, okay, cue the cows. The cows all came around and they just circled the people mover and they just chewed. And it was so quiet. And again, people began to talk and share and look at this cow and listen to this and listen to this. And the next thing you knew, organically, conversation started. And that was the magic of nature. So I just like to wrap up on my end with this. Okay, we know that care farming can be effective and positive. It can promote the improvement of the human physical, social, emotional, or cognitive function. So no matter what type of care farm you want to create and you want to launch, it's important that we have cooperation with and respect for each other as well as the farm animals. We respect our farm environment and we acknowledge the sentience of farm animals and each other. We all have feelings, we all have fears, we all have emotions that we need to express. Understanding the behaviors of ourselves and others, accepting the natural behaviors of others as well as the farm animal. And this is key, understanding that welfare, human welfare, and animal welfare, and environmental welfare, it's not one sided. We are all interconnected.
Thank you, Suzanne. I think it's really helpful to be hearing from you when you have this experience. And again, not all people are going to be working with animals, but those types of things that, regardless of the care farm, you're considering and the value of the practices that you've described with kids or with adults. Um, Thank you for sharing. So we're moving into kind of the last section here. And it's funny because y'all are here as, aspiring and beginning care farmers. And here comes this whole section about building sustainability. And by sustainability, I mean like care farming for the long haul, but you're just beginning. But here's the thing. If you're thinking about beginning, let's let's do this exercise together so that we can learn from other care farmers, which will have some slides on like things they wish they knew, and practical kind of questions and ways to approach the development of a care farm so that you can do this for the long haul. This is a little bit redundant because Suzanne had mentioned this too, but a lot of people reach out to us. They might have a farm already, they might have some land. They're asking, how do I do this? Like, what's my first step? And for anybody who's just kind of in the dreaming stage, um, think about having a listening session with your local community, with those that you are going to be working with another agency, building those partnerships, figuring out again, what is the community need? I'll say for myself, I live half an hour from the nearest town. So on our farm, that's going to look much different than somebody who might be in a more urban environment. But getting into those practical considerations of the thing that you want to do, is there a tie-in to your community? Could there be partnerships with health or education or other social service organizations to either partner together or just help them expand their reach and to share some resources? I also want to note that agency-based care farms are a viable option for those that are just beginning to explore partnerships. And here I have Prospect Meadow Farm. They're located in Hatfield, Massachusetts. The farm itself is operated by ServiceNet, and it provides hands-on vocational training for folks with developmental disabilities, autism, and mental health challenges. So they have this 18-acre farm, actually now multiple farms, where participants care for animals, they grow market crops, they have a really neat shiitake mushroom growing, which you can see one of those pictures right there, him plugging the log. They have an operation. They've just really found their niche with mushroom growing. So they become known for these shiitake mushrooms and fresh eggs and CSA shares. And I just wanted to bring this up because oftentimes care farms can be kind of a front door, if you will, for an agency, and showcase how the agency itself can develop a care farm within their agency and integrate therapeutic support or skill building or farming. So this was done internally. There was somebody at ServiceNet who said, hey, let's start Prospect Meadow. But I'm bringing this up as an example because it could be that you have a social service agency, some direct care provider in your community, and you want to tie this idea of a care firm to them as a partnership. So kind of a neat model to explore. And I feel like we could have added maybe 50 to 100 different slides on questions to ponder. Suzanne, you brought up a lot of really good questions. And there's just a few more, gosh, what's your motivation? Would my neighbors and local community be supportive? We will say, we've had another session of beginning care farming. For those that want to delve into the facility and land options session that we had back in 2024, one of the things that we talk about is the business structure. Are you interested in being a for-profit, a nonprofit, a social enterprise? What the heck is the difference? And then also those practical considerations. I bring this up because of zoning. We have heard from care farmers that here they're opening their doors or close to, and then the neighbors hear about what's going on. And it can get a little rocky. So really be thinking through issues like that. And, if you live in a winter climate, I'm here in Minnesota. What the heck are you going to do in Minnesota in the middle of winter? So these are just a few questions to get you thinking. We cannot stress this enough. Visiting other care farms. One of the best ways to learn and explore more about what it is you could do is by visiting care farms. I will say care farmers are some of the most incredibly generous people in sharing their knowledge and experience. This is not an industry, if you will, that you are going to find a lot of competition in. But we do just, be sure if you're going to plan to visit a care farm, think about people's busy schedules. We know that farming is already hard enough. You add kind of a social mission in with it. Summers are rocking times on care farms. So plan ahead, maybe give a donation when you take a tour. But this is one of our values, I think, as a network, is that we are here to connect people with care farms in their region. Yeah, and a few years back, we hosted a webinar where we had asked care farmers what they wish they had known when they were just starting out. Um, I'm sorry, I just skipped ahead on a slide. This is not the slide. I'll get to that in the next slide. I just want to say that CFN is your resource. These are a bunch of different things that we offer. We have monthly member gatherings. At the end of this webinar, we're going to go through some other ways that you can get involved. And we do offer consultations. Some of those can be sliding scale too, if you would just want to talk through kind of an issue. So take advantage of that. I also just want to say we do have a Facebook discussion group that is private for those of you who are using social media and want to join that, please do. So these last two slides, this is where I was going. We hosted this webinar. We asked some care farmers, if you would have, what do you wish you would have known when you first started out? And Gail Dillon, who is with the Care Farm, she's the executive director and founder of Full Pocket Farm in Montpelier, Virginia. This is what she said. Insurance is hard to get. Y'all might be asking us questions. This is a very common question about how to get insurance. You'll see on that Facebook discussion group that people are throwing that one out all the time. You've got to be prepared to advocate for the folks that you serve. Transportation. If you're in a really rural area, you got to be thinking about how people are getting to and from There's a lot of paperwork, she said. There's a lot of compliance. So you want to learn as much as you can about the services you wish to offer. Going back to the need in your area and your passion. Is somebody else already doing it? Maybe you can collaborate. Check out the partnerships. And here's some more practical things. Again, farming is already hard enough. If you can afford services like payroll or consultants, think about those. But more than anything, you're just kind of realizing that you're in this for the long haul and that your original vision might change. And that's 100% okay. Because where we find ourselves saying to a lot of folks coming and asking, what do I do today? Just do something. You can get just absolutely drawn down into the muck when you are thinking about where to start. So you might just want to start with a small project or just a small gathering. I know in the future, I think maybe even at our upcoming conference in February, we're gonna like get care farms that have been around and established for a while to share what they did in their early stages to inspire and motivate. So that there's not just like the one thing you're supposed to do, but doing something can really, maybe it's a pop-up or something, but action builds momentum. So as we're wrapping up today, I want to encourage all of you to stay connected and get involved. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can join that Facebook discussion group. You can take part in monthly member gatherings. We have 2 more sessions in this series. On October 2nd, we're going to do a deep dive into our resource library, and we're going to be joined by 2 other organizations who have resource libraries of their own, which is a host of information, wealth of information available. And so you can still sign up for that one. And then on October 8th, we're going to have our 3rd session, and that is going to focus on fundraising, both for nonprofit or for-profit farms. We're also hosting 2 in-person care farm meetups. So if you happen to be in Pennsylvania around October 4th or Minnesota, October 9th, we do these meetups and care farms where you can be on site at a care farm, see their operation, and then usually eat a little something and hang out with other people. And you can be brand new to care farming. You do not have to be operating a care farm, just a really nice social events. Let's see. One last thing is that registration for our national conference, which is taking place February 9th through 11th, just outside Washington, D.C., is going to open in mid-October. We would absolutely love to see you there. It is such a good opportunity to meet others face to face, share ideas, and keep this movement together and building. We are going to have special tracks and sessions for aspiring care farmers. So again, you don't have to come with a fully operational farm, and you'll be able to see more on our website. And as I mentioned at the top of the webinar here, the USDA Northeast SARE made some funding available for us to do webinars like this. USDA loves evaluations. So we're going to ask you if you wouldn't mind taking 2 minutes and doing a quick evaluation. Even better if you do it tonight. Andrea is going to pop the link to the eval if she hasn't already into the chat. I'm also going to be sending out a recording of this presentation tonight, along with some of the information that's been shared in the chat. So you can rewatch that, and it will have a link to the evaluation then too. So we are going to stay on and take some questions and hear what you all have to say. I want to thank Suzanne for joining us today. I also encourage you to visit her website. That's going to be in the chat and in our follow-up email. If you have not watched her TED Talk, you should. It's really good. It's super inspiring. So thanks for taking time and sharing your work, Suzanne. And with all of that, whether you're staying on or not, and if you choose to go right now, just thank you so much for coming, for your interest, for whatever work you're already doing, your curiosity. This movement, I believe, is not only transformational, we think it is revolutionary, it is growing, it is exciting. So thank you for your time today. All right.